moon silver. The full moon cast its cold light over the vast, endless landscape, which was shrouded in veils of mist. Not a soul was to be seen, and yet Isabel sensed that she was not alone. Her footsteps on the gravel path of the deserted park sounded like a silent beat against the stillness of the night. It was stupid to be here. She knew it, and yet she hadn't been able to stop it. This strange man had been in her thoughts for days. The stranger with the white hair and the eyes that looked like liquid silver. She had seen him at her friend's vernissage. He had stood quietly in a corner, but had watched her as if he had known her for ages. Adrian. That was the name he had whispered to her when he finally approached her. His voice was soft, a melody that had beguiled her before she understood what was happening. And then he had disappeared, like a shadow in the light. Today, however, she had received a message. No number, no explanation, just a note written in ink. Come if you dare. The time is ours. Isabel had sworn to herself to be careful, but something about Adrian drew her like a moth to a flame. She didn't know what to expect here, but every fiber of her body was strangely tense. She paused when she saw him. He was standing at the edge of a small lake, his white hair falling over his shoulders like moonbeams. The sight took her breath away. He was unnaturally beautiful, almost ethereal, like a being that didn't come from this world. His clothes were simple, black and tailored, but he wore them with an effortless elegance that made him look like a prince. Adrian turned slowly, and there was this strange mixture of danger and desire in his eyes. You came, he said quietly, and Isabel felt her throat go dry. I probably shouldn't, she replied, her voice firmer than she felt. He smiled, a soft, secretive smile that made her knees go weak. Maybe you shouldn't, but you're here. That's what counts. He reached out a hand toward her, and without thinking about it, she grabbed it. His touch was cool, almost like ice, but a strange feeling of warmth flowed through her. He pulled her closer, and Isabel felt the world around her change. The sounds of the park faded, and it was as if only he was there. What do you want from me? She whispered. Everything. His gaze burned into hers, and Isabel felt a tingle spread over her skin. His words were like a promise, and yet there was a darkness in them that both frightened and attracted her. He pulled her even closer until her body was almost touching his. His scent surrounded her, a hint of smoke, leather, and something metallic. His fingers slid over her arm, leaving a trail that was hot and cold at the same time. You're fighting with yourself, he said, his voice low and calm. I can see it in your eyes. You want to run away, and yet you stay. Isabel swallowed, but she couldn't take her eyes off him. What are you? Adrian laughed softly, a dark, velvety sound that numbed her senses. That doesn't matter. All that matters is what you feel, and I can see that you feel it. Before she could answer, he leaned forward, and his lips brushed her cheek. It was a touch as light as a breath, and yet it sent an electric tingle through her. His hand slid along her side, and Isabel held her breath as he pulled her back, sliding his fingertips down in a line until he reached her waist. Her breathing became faster, more uncontrolled. She could have pulled away, could have protested, but her own hands were already around his neck, and she felt his heart beat faster under her touch. Adrian lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. You're not like the others, I knew that from the beginning. His lips touched hers, slowly demanding. It wasn't a kiss that asked permission. It was a kiss that took possession. Isabel felt her legs give way, but he held her tightly. His arms firm as steel, but not uncomfortably so. The world around them dissolved, and all that remained was Adrian. His closeness, his touch, the heat he ignited in her. His fingers continued to wander, exploring, taking possession. Isabel's head fell back slightly, and she felt him cover her neck with soft, cool kisses. "What are you doing to me?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "What you allow me to do," he replied, his teeth lightly grazing the sensitive skin on her collarbone. "Tell me, Isabel, do you want me to stop?" She hesitated, feeling her thoughts dissolve in a sea of lust and desire. Her hands clung to him, as if he were the only anchor in a raging storm. "No," she finally breathed, and in that moment she gave herself to him, to the man who was so different, so dangerous, so unattainable, and yet had awakened her longing so much. The night engulfed them both, and the moon was the only witness to their fall into oblivion.